Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of hip-hop comes an album from one of the most successful artists of all time, a double record following up an innovative and highly popular release, solidifying Jay-Z's position as the top rapper in the game. We're talking about The Blueprint 2. The Blueprint 2, also known as The Gift and the Curse, is the seventh studio album by Jay-Z. It was released on November 12, 2002 on Rockefeller Records and Def Jam Music Group, and is the follow-up to 2001's first Blueprint album. Sessions for the album began in 2001 and featured several different producers, including Timbaland, Kanye West, and Pharrell. The record spotlighted many different musical styles as the previous Blueprint album, with The Gift containing more mainstream content while The Curse featured much darker tracks. The Blueprint 2 debuted at number 1 on the chart, shipping over 545,000 units. Even though the album received mixed reviews from critics, it is currently certified 3 times multi-platinum, selling over 3 million copies worldwide. Thanks to the songs, the production, and the delivery of Jay-Z himself, The Blueprint 2 remains a favorite of rap fans all over the world. And that's the lowdown on The Blueprint 2. So we talked about sequels to albums here on the show. And obviously we talk about movie sequels, kids. We've done it a lot. Go back to the archives, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. But sequels to albums are sort of, they're not as big, if we could say that. It's not often you get a thriller and a thriller part 2. Boy, that would make it for an interesting conversation, let me tell you. But no, we never really got that. So you could always say a follow-up is the sequel to so-and-so or whatever. But, in terms of here is Metallica's Black Album and here's the Blacker album, you're not really going to get that. Not a lot. I'm not saying it's impossible. Again, we've talked about it in the past. But the purpose of that little segue is to get to this. We are on to part 2 of the Blueprint 2, which it's a mouthful, kids. We're just going to call this The Curse. Because the man called it The Curse. Jay calls it The Curse. I didn't call it that. Phil didn't call it that. Well, he might. But Jay called it The Curse first, and everyone needs to know that before we begin. If you caught The Gift, which is part 1 of this 2-part episode, good for you, because you know where we come in at on this particular part right here. And yes, you're tuned in to the appropriate part. If you're looking for The Curse, you have found it. So there you go. Hopefully you've just listened to The Gift, and now you'll listen to The Curse. So, having said all that, Phil, we warned everyone to begin with that we had thoughts about this album. And those thoughts included comments such as, hey, this is not my favorite album of all time, but ... And I think we're maybe back in the same boat. And perhaps, depending on your point of view, your take on these songs that we're going to cover here today, your take may not be as bright and cheery as mine, or it could be flipped the other way around. Who knows where this will lead? But Phil, let's get into it. Tell me, as we get cranking here, what's your overall view of part 2, also known as The Curse?
The Curse is a very confounding disc, because there are songs on here I like. There are very, very bright spots on here. But I feel like it is kind of a good summation of the album, because there are things on here that are great, but there are other choices that I'm like, why did this make the album? Like, why'd you put this on here?
Right.
Or this is good, but that's not very good. It's like, yeah, I feel like as a whole, the Blueprint 2, it's not a bad album. There are a lot of good things on it, but there are a lot of things that could have been left on the chopping room floor.
And also, one of the points I think we both heavily agreed on for part 1 of this episode was the idea that Jay wasn't really to fault for anything on the first part of this, on The Gift, because it wasn't his performance. it was the choice of song style, it was the choice of placement, it was the choice of chorus, the choice of refrain, the choice of wording, but that his performance was spot on. Do you feel the same way about The Curse also?
No, I definitely feel like when it comes to rapping on the second half of this album, again, he comes with an A game. He is rapping some of his best verses on the second half of this album, but some of the songs are not as good as his verses, or it might not even be the production choices on it. Sometimes the song choices, the hook choices on this thing are just not very good.
Do you think it's a matter of he's at this point, and I'm not sure how many albums came after this, but I would say this is probably his biggest point in his career at that time. Is this a matter of, do we want to call it overconfidence? Do you think he looked at this and said, why not do a double? Why not? I'm Jay. I'm on a roll. Let's just do this. What do you think maybe if you could get into his head, what do you think maybe the thought was here?
It's interesting because I said this a lot in the first album, on the first half of this album, that there's so much music on this album, but there are so many times where it seems like he's trying to retrace other parts of his career that were better, or trying to, make another version or a remix of a better song. And it almost feels like this entire album, it felt like he was like, I don't really have much left to say at this point in my career. I've been around since 96. Uh and like, I just put out essentially, up to that point, what a lot of people were considering my best album in Blueprint. And in the sequel, I was like, all right, well, I got to come with something that might sell as well and might be as acclaimed. But again, it just felt like he was trying to catch lightning in a bottle with a lot of things again, and it just didn't work. And I feel like a part of the reason why the Black Album was so good, because the Black Album came right after this, is that it felt like he had reached the point where, even though he was telling you for throughout that album that he was done, he was retiring, and he didn't have much else to say, it at least felt like he was exploring new territory. And I felt like a lot of the songs here, my knock on it is that it isn't really anything new. It's stuff that we had already heard from him before.
It was a rehash, really, right? I mean, that's retread maybe is the right word, but
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of weird to throw that at a sequel because it's a sequel. But I feel like the Blueprint 2 doesn't necessarily improve on a lot of things that we got from Jay in the first Blueprint. It just feels like, hey, let's try and recapture this. Let's try and remake this song, or hey, let's try and do a remix to this song, or hey, let's take another song that was on another album and do a remix on it for my own album. And that's cool, but I don't need a whole album for you to do that.
yeah, good call. Why not do an album of remixes? That would make better sense.
Yeah. Again, that's not to say that there's not a lot to like about this album. There are a lot of songs I like on this album, but there is a lot of stuff that I feel like could have been left off.
Mm, yeah. Um, well, let's run down some of the specs of this before we get into this particular side of the album, kids, if we can call it a side. Released almost a year to the date as the first Blueprint, which of course we know was released on 9/11/2001. The Blueprint number 2 was released on November 12th, 2002. So just a little over a year since the release. September, October. Yeah, a couple months later, but it's very close. The total runtime is 112 minutes and 2 seconds. Of course, Rockefeller and Def Jam as always. And we've got a litany of producers here. We ran through the first album and told you all the producers, our thoughts, runtimes, and all that. We're going to do that here again. I don't know how many times this happens for me personally, Phil, but we're actually going to kick this album or this side of the album off with my favorite on this side of the album. Uh, if I put on Diamond is Forever, dude, I could absolutely listen to this and have listened to this multiple times in a row and just let it repeat. This is my favorite track on the entire album. It's definitely my favorite track on The Curse. And the Watcher Part 2, I think I chose as my favorite for the gift. But this outshadows that for me. It's just catchy. It's got the right riff. It does everything I need a Jay song to do. Um, I think he's on point. The beat is just effing fantastic. I just think it fits his style. And the chorus, the refrain, I think everything fits in here. To me, Phil, this is Jay very much in his comfort zone. So, what is your take on Diamond is Forever?
Yeah, I like Diamonds Forever. I think that it is it fits the mood of what he's trying to do with the albums. And the first album is more about like the glitz and the lavish style of his life, and all of the comforts that comes with the success of his career. And the second half of the album is darker, so it starts a lot gloomier. It has like a darker tone to it.
Hmm.
And I like it. Yeah, it's a lot of, again, this is Jay rapping. He has a lot of bars on here I like. Um, yeah, it's a good track.
I like the way you said darker. This tone does, if now that you're making me think about it, this beat does get a little. Is dark the right word? Maybe sort of an ominous sound to it. Like it's awesome, but I can see where you're coming from. It's not as there's nothing cheery. This is not Hard Knock Life. This is not cheery and upbeat. This is sort of
Yeah.
that minor chord progression, like going downward.
Yeah, if you compare this to Dream that starts the first
Mm.
half of the album, it's night and day. It's like that is like upbeat and like, hey, even Hovey Baby, which Hovey Baby is very bright and poppy and mainstreamy, and then you get this record and it just has a complete different tone to it.
Yeah, and once again, dude, as we said, he is in his element. The rhymes on this particular song um, are just on point. I mean, everything he says, everything fits. It's fascinating, dude, to me to just read his lyrics, the way he makes everything fit. And he's not the only guy that can do this, right? But he's such a master at this. Um, but this here rap belongs to us. Nobody's strong as us. It's a fact. Hold up, I'm just warming up. Give me a second to get it back. Um, I mean, it's just everything fits, man. And just this to me sounds like I'm the best in the game. Young because I'm 32, dressed like I'm 22, flow like an 18, do what I want to do. I mean, this is just full confidence, man. To me, Jay's at his best when his confidence level is up. I mean, you could hear that the further he got in his career, couldn't you? Couldn't you just hear his confidence level sort of increasing and getting better the longer he went?
Yeah, I feel like on this album, he because again, I feel like he came off of a masterpiece in Blueprint where he just made this statement album of saying, "Hey, I am the best now." You can say what you want, but this is my body of work on this album. I am the best, and it's hard. It was hard to argue with him at that time, and I feel like he came back on this album. Um, when you listen to these verses, it's like, no, this guy's this guy's the best. We might not always agree with some of the choices on this album, but some of the verses on here are just unbelievable.
Yeah, you put on two tube socks, you couldn't walk in my shoes. Um, that's a great line, dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's one of my favorite bars on the song.
Cat fighting, cat walking, it happens often. It's true how society don't want me to move into the penthouse building with spectacular views. They're like, oh, he's a menace. He could never be a tenant. I'm like, ooh, what's a young in to do? Yeah. I mean, he's what's that? What's the old cliche from the outhouse to the penthouse? That's kind of what this feels like.
Yeah, you left out the Sharpton line. Don't let me bring Sharpton in it because I'm dark skinned, or do with the fro from the Rainbow Coalition.
Yes, victim of a single parent household, born in a mouse hole. Dude, victim of a single parent household, born in a mouse hole. I mean, how do you write that? How do you write that and just, oh man.
I snatched purses. I persevered. I've always liked that line. Just
Yeah,
that the alliteration of bringing purse and persevere.
it's good. I swear I only make good from my mouth to God's ears. Yeah. Had to get out of the hood and I couldn't justify, and I can't justify genocide, but I was born in the city where skinny ends die, born in the city where the skinny ends ride. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. as I said, dude, this is my favorite tune on the entire album. I don't know. The album kicked off perfectly with Dream. Great way to kick it off. But and dude, there again, how many times have we said this guy knows how to kick an album off? What other song do you begin the curse with other than this one? This makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Um, let's see. So Diamond is Forever runs for 3 minutes 56 seconds. Not the shortest on the curse. Um, produced by Ron Feimster and Big Chuck, with Jay on and Feimster, and also Stanton on the writing credits. Chuck Stanton. There you go, Big Chuck. So we're gonna go to track 2, Phil. And I listened to this again before we went and we started recording, because I am seriously, after multiple listens of this song over the years, I'm still trying to give this tune a chance. Because again, I'm a Lenny Kravitz fan. I'm a Heavy D fan. I'm a Guns N' Roses fan. But you put all these things together, but there's no Guns N' Roses, and Lenny's barely playing guitar, and I just can't get into this. And like, I really want to love it, but to me, dude, this should have a 99 Problems kind of feel. This should have um a Rick Rubin vibe to it. And maybe that's the problem. It wasn't produced by Rick Rubin. So we've talked about this maybe at the tail end of the first Blueprint. But what's your take on Guns N' Roses? Why does this song not work, in your opinion?
There, it's such an interesting track because it's like, I really like the instrumentation at the beginning of the song. The way it starts is great. Um, I even like the first verse. Um, Boy, I don't like the Lenny Kravitz vocals on the song. Uh, I don't know. It just his vocals just don't sound great, and it could be just the placement of his vocals. I think that's what it is. I think the times when he comes in, he's just kind of wailing on vocals. It's like, all right, and then it gets, and look, the chorus is not bad. I like the lyrics to the chorus, but it just doesn't necessarily fit the rest of the song. Um, I don't know, man. It just this doesn't. It 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 is a perfect example of having a bunch of ingredients that are good and putting them together, and it's not necessarily good.
Yeah. You ever season the stew, right?
Yeah, I do feel
Yeah.
like this is a little overproduced as well. I really like the pre-chorus. Like I said, I really like a lot of things about this song, but as a whole, it's not my favorite song on the album.
Same here. And honestly, I think I've said this. I don't remember where I said it. But I feel like Lenny phoned it in. And he's a insanely talented guy. But I've seen performances and I've heard recordings of Lenny where and look, kids, this is just Tom. You don't have to agree. It's all good, right? But for me personally, it has felt like in the past that Lenny can phone it in. Now, to be fair, dude, his phoning in is not bad. But from what he can do when he's on his game, like, Are You Gonna Go My Way? Is Lenny Kravitz absolutely on his game, period. And then there's other tunes where I'm like, yeah, he just kind of showed up for the studio, and that's kind of all that happened. So like, I don't know. I don't hear any life here. I don't hear any. And dude, maybe it's just me. It depends on what your take, how you feel about this. It kind of feels like this is supposed to be a rocker, like a sort of R&B mixed with a rocker kind of track and have an edge to it. It missed for me, man. I don't know. This just missed for me. What about Jay-Z's work on this? What do you think about his raps on this particular song?
Um, I like it. Uh, yeah, there are great lines in here, like the start of verse one is very good. I mean, he starts verses on this album very good. He's good at coming in with a very good first line to hook you and keep you on and keep you listening for the rest of the song. Like, even if you don't like the song, he'll come in with a line. I'm like, oh, Uh, but nah, it's just the song itself is like every time I listen to it, I end up either sitting listening for a few minutes and going, "Nah, we're gonna skip this one." Uh,
Yeah. Honestly, I
uh,
skip it more than I listen to it.
but yeah, one of my favorite bars in there is the totes, war guns and roses, foes visibly shook up the invisible bullies, which is another line that he is an homage to Biggie.
Good call. Yeah. And, not for nothing, but Heavy D's produced this song. Like,
Yeah, hey, no, he gets on at the beginning and tell you he produced it. So
yeah,
even if
yeah.
you didn't know,
I'm like, maybe D, you didn't want to tell us you produced it. I don't know. Let me
uh,
ask you this. Now, listen, this is fantasy booking 101 here, Phil, but who do you maybe put on this as producer, if not Heavy D, that maybe could have pulled this out? Any gut feeling on that?
I don't know if the production is the problem. I just don't know if I don't know if it was the right mix of talent on this beat. I think with somebody else on this beat, it might have been better. I'm not sure Jay fits on this record, and I'm not sure that Jay and Lenny Kravitz especially fit on here. Like it just feels like a weird mix.
Yeah.
But again, it just feels like the Sean Paul feature at the beat on the first half of the album, where it's like, hey, there's somebody famous that I could work with. Let me try and do a record with Lenny. Why not?
Yeah.
And it just the result is like, why? It doesn't feel like there's anything particularly special about this where we needed this collaboration.
Because who knew dude that loved apple pies from McDonald's would soon be the boss of the Big Apple, And who knew dude that played ball for the NBA would make a mistake on the whole new estates, throw it away. Man, they giveth and they taketh, life is cruel that way, but even a broken clock is right at least 2 times a day. That's good. Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's a lot more here than just the production.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just not, and you know what, dude? For me, that refrain of Jay saying it's the Rock, I, man, that gets annoying for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I think that I feel like another thing I said in the first half of this episode is that I feel like this album was a transition for him doing other things. And I feel like he's done rock collabs since then that were so much better. Um, I feel like he understood, where to fit in the pocket over beats like this and when to let the other artists just um, kind of, uh, not take control, but giving them room to uh, stretch on this thing. Like, cause I really feel like this doesn't even feel like a collab with Lenny. It just feels like Lenny came in and did his vocals over the beat, and then he left. And then
Mm.
Hove came in and he did his verses, and that was kind of that.
Yeah. Um, Dwight Myers is credited, of course, that's Heavy D. John McCree from Cake is credited as a writer on this song, which tells me they probably sampled a Cake tune. It runs for 4 minutes 26 seconds, and Phil, that's the second part of this for me, is that the song is way too long.
It
It
is
just feels
very
like
long.
it's never going to end. I mean, not for nothing, kids. When you can do what the Beatles could do in 2 minutes and sell 1 billion copies and be number one for like 80 weeks or some crazy nonsense number, that's the thing. That's, keep it tight, keep it simple, and get to the point. And I don't know. I didn't feel that here at all. I just felt like it just kept going. I think it gets better. Number three, depends on your take, Phil. Number three is a callback to the first Blueprint, and we get a few of those on this album. This is "You Don't Know" the remix. Just Blaze. We finally got Just Blaze back on this by track 3, which is good. Once again, we've got Bobby Bird credited on the writing here as we did on the first Blueprint. MOP is on here. Um, Eric Murray. Well, they both are on here, so there you go. So how do you feel about "You Don't Know"? Because if I tell you I preferred the original, Then I listen to this and I get into the groove of it and I'm like, nah, I think I like this one better. So I'm kind of torn. What's your take on the remix of You Don't Know?
You can't go wrong with You Don't Know. It's one of Jay's best tracks. You Don't Know, and I the remix is good. But it again, this is one of my knocks on this album is that hey, the remix of this is great. But did it need to be on this album? It's a part of one of those things where it's like, yeah, we've been here. We know that You Don't Know is a great track, but the remix of it doesn't really add anything that different that it needed to be here. And that's not to say that this is a bad track. It's not at all. MLP is MLP. It, I mean, the second you hear that beat and you think MLP on this, of course, yeah, of course they're gonna kill it because they bring a certain energy to tracks like this. They're gonna be they're gonna yell at you for a few minutes. They're gonna they're gonna get you in a vibe where you want to get hyped and you want to get up and jump up and down or punch somebody in the face. Um,
Yeah.
So no, MLP is great on this record. The new J verse at the end of it is great as well. But again, it's just like this album. It just feels like a lot of this album is rehash.
Yeah, and you struck a chord with me when you said not that this song isn't good, but did we actually need it? I mean, I would argue, as much as I dig this, I don't know that I needed this remix in my life, to be honest, because I enjoyed the first one so much.
Yeah, this felt
Um,
like one of those he could have released it as a single,
yeah,
and it didn't necessarily need to be on the album. Because I mean, he has other remixes from this album that he released that were either on a soundtrack or they were just like a single, and they didn't make the album. Man, the remix that could have made this album is the remix to "Excuse Me, Miss," which is amazing. It's one of the best J records to me, and it
mhm.
actually made the whatever the other version of Blueprint 2.1. It's on there, but it's not on this. It's there's other remixes on that album as well that did make this album. So it's just an odd choice for me to go. Well, this was one of the biggest tracks off of Blueprint, so for Blueprint 2, why not? Let's just put the remix on there. Um, yeah.
Um, you dudes is noodles. I got more ziti to bake. You dudes is cake. I keep two biscuits on the waist. Razor blades under the tongue. I will eat your face. Appetite for destruction. I'm starving today. Interesting. He fit appetite for destruction in the song that comes after Guns N' Roses. So
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Man, got man, I really love that verse too, man. That's just food for thought. That don't let it go to waste.
Yeah,
Bite the bullet until you stuff in your face.
it's good. What you don't know, make your home a permanent urn. He's always on his game. I can't say in every album, but I know for sure on this album he's on his game. And dude, maybe that's the answer here. Before I keep dissecting this and we make everybody feel like we hated it, maybe that's the real answer here, Phil. Is that he was on his game. So why not feel untouchable? Why not feel like you can do anything you want to do? But trust me, kids, when I tell you, we're not the only two dudes on the planet who have feelings about this album. There's a lot of people that feel a certain kind of way about this album.
Yeah,
So, you know,
I think at the time too, Jay was doing this thing where he released an album every year, and I think trying to come back and tour and all this other stuff and then release every year. I feel like this album is not bad, but I feel like he had a lot of content where he was like, let's just put this out. It's a double disc, you know. It's gonna sell, which it did, and I to me after Blueprint, I feel like he could have waited until he had something more to say, and he was in a better place creatively. I feel like he just put out an album the next year to as a follow up. Like, hey, well, why not? I put out an album every year, so here's a follow up.
mm-hmm.
And again, that's not to say this album is bad or I don't like it. And I don't want to make it even sound like I don't like the You Don't Know remix. I love the You Don't Know remix, but it just again, this isn't new territory.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I'm just, as again, I don't know that I particularly needed this tune in my life, but we have it. We'll make the best of it. So again, I don't hate on it. It's just one of those things where I'm like,
Yeah,
I
it's
could live
great.
without it.
I've
Yeah,
I've seen them perform it. It's great.
yeah. Um, let's see if you feel that way about track number 4. Track number 4 runs for 4:59 compared to the 4:27 on You Don't Know. This is Meet the Parents, and boy, if you thought Guns N' Roses was a long song, well, do you hear Meet the Parents? Now, that may be okay, Phil, because this song is much different in tone than Guns N' Roses. Um, much like Diamond is Forever, this has a very sort of, maybe sinister is too big of a word, but sort of a darker tone to it. Um, I don't hate this tune. In fact, I kind of dig it. I can't say it's my favorite on the album because it's not, but I do enjoy the song. And honestly, I don't really skip it all that much either. Just Blaze produced this one, kids. He said the original beat of the song was completely different, but when they mixed the track, they changed many elements to avoid sample clearance issues. He had to reproduce the record in just one night because very close to the date the album had to be turned in. So apparently, I don't want to say rush job. I don't think that the implication is that's a rush job here, but um, supposedly it's semi autobiographical. The moral of the story is be there for your kids no matter what the circumstances. So there's some heavy lyrics in here, dude. Some heavy themes in this song. So what's your take on Meet the Parents?
I absolutely love Meet the Parents. I think it's one of Jay's best B-sides. I think when I come up with a list of top J records, I feel like it's always on there, because I feel like he's done other songs where he's kind of flexed his muscles as a storyteller, and took like a concept and ran with it for a whole song. But this is the first time, or at least the best example I can think of. I won't say the first time because he does pretty much tell a story on Song Cry as well.
Mm.
Um, but I feel like this is probably one of the best examples of his storytelling ability. Um, yeah, just the whole story he tells throughout this thing is just like it's engaging, even if it's one of those like you're in a good mood and you might not be in the mood for something dark. He keeps you hooked for the entire song of
Yeah.
listening, even though you know how the story is going to end every time. You'll sit and listen to it, and I feel like the way he starts with it, with the first they love me, then they hate me, then they love me again, um, is very good because it's kind of the theme of the second half of the album, and that he has all this success in life, but uh, he had a very uh poor relationship with his dad because his dad wasn't in his life, and that's a theme that's on a lot of his albums. He addresses it several times, um, and I feel like a part of him, even because he's done this thing more than once on several albums, where he'll have a song where it's very declarative to his mom to go, "I made it," like, and I have my mom here to celebrate this with, but it also has this like footnote of, "Man, my dad was never here,"
Mm.
uh, and so yeah, this song is just very good. I don't think it's total an autobiography for what actually happened to him growing up, but just the story of it and the hook of it, of following it all the way to the end of the song and getting to the line 6 shots into his kid out of the gun. It's just so great, man. Just the end of it hits you with such a heavy punch that it's just so good.
Yeah, and it's pretty dark, but no, like you said, the father theme is there quite a bit. He's not the only guy to put this stuff in his album, and for anybody out there that grew up without a dad, it sucks. It defines you as a man, and that can be good, or it can be bad, or it can be indifferent, and sometimes it can be tragic. It just depends on your situation. Was your mother a strong person? I got lucky in this world, kids. My mom was a very strong person. So it helped and guided me up to becoming a young man, and then later as I got older. But dude, it's definitely a missing piece that Jay wasn't able to replace, obviously. Um, but yeah, the lyrics in this is big. Liquor to the curb for my end up above. When it cracks through the pavement, that's the way of sending love. So give a big hug. Tell Aaliyah I said hi. Till the next time I see her on the other side. He was just some thug that caught some slugs, and we loved him because in him we saw some of us. He walked like us, talked like us, his back against the wall. He fought like us. Uh, yeah. I mean, there again, dude. If you get an award for songwriting, he should because it's
Yeah,
the
he's
lyrics here
in
are
the
spot
Songwriters
on.
Hall of Fame.
There you go. Yeah. End up dead before 38. That's the life of us raised by winter. It's a cold world. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, the man, I just think the beat change when it gets towards the end of it, and it's not just that his verses are so good and the story he's telling is so gripping. The production on here is so good because the the beat gets more and more intense the longer you go into the story until it's just this very gritty, like guitar over it. It man, I just feel like this is easily to me one of the best songs on the album.
Yeah, and Just Blaze, dude, honestly had more hits than misses with Jay, I would think.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, so we're gonna take that. And we're gonna roll on to track number 5, Somehow, Some Way, featuring Beanie Siegel and Scarface. They both have credits on the writing here, kids. Just Blaze producing this again. And just when you thought the songs couldn't get longer, clocking in at 5 minutes, 37 seconds. This is the longest song on the album. Dude, Jay has a fascination with that synthesized voice, that computer enhanced voice. I don't know what the fascination is or what that's supposed to be. If there's a behind the scenes story, I don't know it. Um, there's moments when it's okay with me, and there's other moments when it takes away from the song.
Yeah.
It takes away from this song from me, dude. I'm not in love with this song. What's your take on Somehow, Some Way?
Uh yeah, it's one of those where I feel like he's made magic with Beanie and Scarface before. Like cuz he's got like Guess Who's Back or their more popular record is off of the Rock La Familia album. Why am I drawing a blank on the name of that song? I've heard it 1,000 times. This Can't Be Life. This Can't Be Life that is produced by Kanye. And I feel like he's trying to recapture the magic of This Can't Be Life on this song. And that's why again I feel like a lot of the stuff he does here feels fairly derivative to me because it's like he's done he's done better songs with the same collaboration, but he's trying to capture the same magic again, and it's just not quite as good. And that's not to say that this is a bad song. It's not a bad song. It's just he can and has done better. Um, I mean, I'm never gonna complain about a Scarface verse because Scarface is incredible. And his verse on here is the highlight of the song.
And there's actually Jermaine Jackson um, sample on this from Castles of Sand. Um, so yeah, which I didn't see that coming. I don't think I knew that tune. But I'm with you. I think this is again, this is one of those. It just feels like it's missing the mark. It's not hitting on all cylinders. This is pretty dark. I mean, I thought the other tune was dark as well, but this is it's again. I think you defined it when we dove into this particular episode, this part of the album. It really does go south in terms of the sound. Um, it's very dense. This song, it's heavy. It just feels like there's so much in the instrumentation. It just feels like there's so much going on in this song. Um, and I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but God, it just feels heavy. And we just made the comment that Just Blaze had more hits than misses in our estimation. And then, he's producer on this particular song as well. Um, so yeah, I mean, somehow, some way, sort of a miss. Somehow, some way, it's a miss. I don't know. Not to be all like that about it, kids. That's just kind of where I fall on that. So I'm curious to see what you think about this next tune. So track number 6. This is the first time we see Kanye on this side of the album. This is Some People Hate. Runs for 4 minutes, 32 seconds. Brenda Russell with the vocal on this is absolutely killing it. What is your take on this? Because I think not only is the composition good, I like the beat, I like the sound, but I think she makes this. And honestly, there have been moments before, in my opinion, where Jay's had a female vocalist on doing the chorus, and it kind of takes away from his delivery, from his impact. I don't feel that way at all. I think these two work very well on this track. But I'm curious what you think. What's your take on Some People Hate?
I really like Some People Hate. I do like the vocals a lot. I like the beginning. What I don't know what sample he uses at the beginning, but I'm assuming that's a sample at the beginning. I really like how the song opens. I really like Jay's ad libs at the beginning where he's saying, "This must be how Pac felt when he made Me Against the World. All eyes on me.
Oh,
I
that's
know
good.
y'all ain't hating."
And he references Biggie more than he references Pac, but he does occasionally throw one in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I really dig this tune. I think it's
Man,
one of the redeeming things about this side of the album.
man. Again, he starts the verse very, very well, man. The raw, rough, and rugged. When addressing the mass public, my attitude is, man, come on, man. He kills it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. So the word hate is interesting. It was a common theme in later years. In 2009, he released Hate to collaboration with Kanye West. Then he led a verse to Kanye's 2010 track Monster, in which he claimed he doesn't get enough love.
Yeah.
Um,
Hate is on Blueprint 3, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right. Yeah. Can't wait to get to that album. So much more fun than this one. So I'm just saying. But yeah, you're right. This is again, dude. He's on his game on this. Be that I'm flesh of your flesh, blood of your blood, come from the same hood you come from. We share basically the same stories. Thought would appreciate what I came and did since 96 every year. Something must be seriously wrong with the world. I know y'all ain't hating.
No, y'all ain't hating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the hook to this. The Some People Hate.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah, I love it. I really like the first verse though. Like I said, the way he starts that first verse is just perfect.
Yeah. Got to chip on my shoulder the size of the gold nugget in Vegas. It's good. Oh, that's good. Sort of like progetic justice. The payment for brushes with police officers. Wow. Yeah, he's on his game. She sounds great. This tune's doing it for me. This is probably my second favorite track on the album. Um, yeah, she's killing it. I mean, dude, maybe the answer is yes, and obviously yes. I don't know, but I've never looked up a performance of this with him and her both on stage. I assume that happened at some point. I would imagine so, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
It'd be something to look up. Um, So it's no mistake, is it, that and Kanye's later work with Jay kind of got to be a little but when he first started collaborating with him, it was really on point. This is kind of harkening back to that, isn't it? Where it's like really on point with those two guys working together.
Yeah, I feel like he later in his career they've worked together and it has been much better. I mean, by the time they make Watch the Throne, I feel like they're making some of their best music together. I for whatever reason on the second half of this album, I wasn't that high on a lot of the Kanye production, but I feel like this is the best beat he produced on his album.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of those welcome changes of pace on this album, kids. And dude, it still has that tone. It's not an upbeat song. It still has that tone, but man, it fits the vocals and everything fits with this one a little bit more than the tone does with the rest of the curse, I think. I think that's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the themes on this side of the album, this fits on this side of the album of him, basically, I mean, him saying it in the ad libs at the beginning, like I've been here since '96, killing it, like y'all still hating, like that's part of what comes with success. Yeah, it just his verses on here are just some of my favorite on the album, man. The second verse when he's doing the Ali reference, and he does the I roll with the punches so I survive. I bob and weave, move my feet from side to side. And he does, man. There's a Kobe line I'm forgetting in there, but the way he does it, he's it's like an old Negro spiritual, but I mastered Toby with a splash of Monster Kobe, shoot faster than Kobe.
Yeah. Yeah. Big homie from the Rock. I think you pastor's lonely. You need Jesus in your life. It's either that or y'all gonna make me put the double Desert Eagles in your life. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Everything's working. Everything's working on this team.
he has a few bars in this where he raps something like this, and he has this really good like sly sense of humor in it. That's just that line itself. I think your past is lonely. It's great.
It's great, man. It's really good. This is again, this is when everything's on point with this guy, it's on point. And even when it's not on point, it's still not bad. It's just, you know, interesting selection. I can't even say poor choice of selection, but it's interesting selection on a lot of this album. But this is not one of them. Like, this song clicks, this song works. And honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and say it as we get there. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. The next tune, Blueprint 2, Blueprint Squared, if you want to be so bold, produced by Charlemagne, which I think is the first time we see Charlemagne on this album. And runs for 4 minutes, 49 seconds. This has the, and I'm trying to remember the name of the sample. It's from the old,
it's from a
Westerns.
Western. I can't remember the name of the Western though.
It's an Eastwood Western, isn't it? Or is it?
Ecstasy
of Gold is the track.
Yeah, I'm not much of a Western fan, so I probably would get it wrong. But I know that it's a sample from a Western.
Because I think that Ecstasy of Gold is the same tune that Metallica has used in their stage shows as well, because they've used it on their album.
Yeah, but it's like a very well-known Western sample. Yeah. It's been in commercials. It's been in tons of stuff.
Yep. 4 minutes, 49 seconds. I think this is a highlight of the album. It is for me. I think this song works. It feels big. The sample is perfect. It brings a gravity to this. It brings a weight to this track, but in a really, really good way. It's not dense. It's just a little bit heavier, but it's heavy in a way that to me feels big. And I know the sample's what's doing it for me.
Yeah.
That's making me have that feeling. But man, this feels like a really big song to me. I think it really does.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Blueprint 2 is one of the highlights of the album. Not just because the sample he uses and just the idea of Jay rapping over this. And there's been several other rappers that have sampled the same song. But just his ad-libs at the beginning, when he's talking at the beginning, just there's so many quotables from this thing. And one of the ongoing jokes that I sample from this all the time is him saying, I brought the flutes this time, Guru. Unleash the flutes on them. There are no flutes on this song.
Isn't that weird?
There are no flutes on this song, but he's like, unleash the flutes on them.
And of all the references to have, or all the things to have in the song, he's got a Austin Powers reference with the verses, which is very odd.
I don't like the hook to the song. I will go ahead and say that. I think the hook doesn't fit the song. Mm-hmm. But everything else about it, his verses on it are great. This song is essentially a sequel to Takeover, because the entire song is essentially him clapping back at Nas after Ether. And so the story goes that he put out Takeover, of course, on the first Blueprint, and then Ether came out as a response to Takeover, and then Jay came back with, I felt like a terrible response and Super Ugly, in a sense where he let Nas knock him off his square. He didn't come back and try to out rap Nas. He just tried to be as vulgar and kind of as annoying as possible in my mind. And you know, he alludes to the fact that he slept with his baby mother in Takeover, but it's kind of a line at the end. It's the you know who, the you know what, well you know who. Let's keep that between you and me. And so, but he outright says it in Super Ugly, and he drops some pretty gross lines in there that didn't need to be there. So much so that the story goes that his mother called him after she heard it and told him to apologize, and he got on the radio and apologized for it.
Nice.
And so that's where you get the line in this song with "My mama can't save you this time, your history."
That's great. I did not know that story. That's awesome.
But yeah, the verses on this thing, particularly the second verse, because the second verse is just essentially he doesn't even go back to the hook in the second half of the song. He gives us this long second verse that feels like him going on this long tirade that is it's so good. But even how he starts it with the y'all from afar threw thoughts my way. What you thought I would not have nothing to say. Nope.
Yeah, the stuff with Nas it felt like it lasted forever, but it really didn't, right? Just I
Yeah, there
mean,
are a
was
lot.
it how many albums are we talking about that they kept taking shots at each other?
It went on for a while,
Did it?
but there are very, very targeted shots of him throughout this thing. I mean, in the first verse when he's saying, "You can't give credit to anything dude says. Same dude to give you ice and you arm some head, shorty," which is a reference to the Nas song with the with. I hate that song, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
the
No, I know
the
what you're talking
yeah, it's a reference to that song. He references that song twice in this song.
about. And he name checks Rosie Perez in this tune also, which is different.
um, yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, Miss Rosie Perez. I call a spade a spade. It just is what it is.
Well, he referenced Rosie Perez because I think at the time Rosie Perez said something about she didn't appreciate his use of certain words for women in an article. And so that's why he said that. And that's a again, the I think I said this in the first half of this, but the way that he starts verses, I think by this point in his career, he had mastered this way of formatting his verses, and we saw that in Meet the Parents in the way that he told the story. But he started a verse with a theme, and then he'd come back to it later. So when he started the verse with "Y'all in your articles, Hawk spit at Jay," and then he came back to that with the Rosie Perez line because he was talking about her saying something about him in an article.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just come on, man. One of my favorite verses on the album is the second verse. The second verse is incredible from start to finish. Just the can't y'all see that he's fake? The rap version of TD Jakes prophesizing on your CDs it takes won't break you a crumb off the little bit that he makes. And this is with whom you want to place your faith.
Dude,
Just so great.
once again he's in his element on this song for sure.
Yeah, there's so many quotables from that part. His just just because he's wearing kufis, it don't mean that he's bright.
Oh man, yeah.
Man, which I've quoted that several times because I don't know if you noticed, but on Twitter there are a lot of times people are doing this joke where they put kofis on people, or they're putting the African hat on people, and it's like people are enlightened. And so years ago I quote that all the time. Just because he's wearing a kufi don't mean that he's bright. Just because you don't understand him, it don't mean that he's nice. It just means you don't understand all the bullshit that he writes.
Oh man, I mean it's
Man, that whole line, is it Uchi Wally Wally or is it one Mike? Is it black girl lost a shorty owe you for ice? I'm a real all my life and they confuse that with conceit. Since I will not lose, they try to help him cheat.
But they don't call me the dude to take his dollars to give gives the projects. These dudes is all politics depositing checks.
And y'all buy this caught up in ice. Go Goofies don't mean any right. That is one of my favorite lines on here, man. Or man, when he comes back and he hits the I get the spoils because the victor is me. You're an actor. You're not who you depicted to be. You street dreaming. All y'all living through me. I gave your life when people was forgetting you MC, which I totally felt the same way when Takeover came out. Because I was like, man, nobody was talking about Nas, and he came out and demolished him on Takeover. And it basically put more attention on Nas again for him to come out with a better response.
Yeah, dude, he was put him on the map, like back on the map, I should say. Yeah, it's like he kind of did Nas a favor, didn't he? I mean, by taking shots at him.
In some ways it helped his career. But just that quotable of telling somebody, I gave you light when people was forgetting you MC. I'm a legend. You should take a picture with me.
Oh,
You
that's
should be
good.
happy to be in my presence. I should charge you a fee. I'm
Yeah.
Big Dog, Glen Rob. Listen, God, you a flea.
I love that. You should take a picture with me. God, man, that's awesome. Yeah.
Man,
What's the problem, B? You're not as hard as me. Yeah.
God, just so many quotables, man. Who you know, flow as vicious as me, yet so religiously. That's why they call me Hove.
You want war than it's war it's gonna be. Yeah. Remember when rap was fun and two guys would go at each other and no guns were involved and it was just guys just having beef with each other? Those are the fun days of rap. Whatever happened to that? Just saying. I mean, dude, that goes back to the 80s when it was I'm the best MC there is and no one can touch me. And it was all friendly, sort of, that to me, that's what this kind of stuff reminds me of. Yeah, they got a little vicious in the press and whatnot on their albums, but, didn't come to blows that I know of. Like they just kept it professional, which, well, you could argue it wasn't professional, but
yeah,
they kept it to the recordings anyway.
It's funny because what I said earlier about how this album feels a lot like retread, even retreading back to the Nas beef in this album, it kind of felt wholly unnecessary because at that point, a lot of people felt like Jay lost. Not just because Ether was a better response, but the fact that he dropped Super Ugly and then he had to come back and apologize for it after his mom heard it. And it made him look bad. I felt like the whole scenario made him look bad. People felt like he had lost by the time this album came out. And it's kind of a shame because the second verse on this is so good, but it feels like it's kind of too little too late. But all of the holes that he pokes at Nas in that second verse are just so good. I mean, man, is it Uchi Wally Wally or is it one mic? Is it's still a quotable for me. I poke that at people all the time online. I see other people quote out all the time online.
Yeah, very quotable track, man, for sure. A lot of stuff. It reminds me of the Black Album in that regard because there's a lot of stuff that's highly quotable on the Black Album as well. But that's his gift, man. That's his gift for making you remember lyrics. I mean, this song's doing it for me. I mean, this is another top-notch track. If only there had been more like this, Phil. If only there had been more like this on this album, we might not would have had such a difficult go of it. Which that to me segues to the next track because the next track is we're going to call it Please. You kids can read, figure it out. This features young Chris, also on the vocal, produced by the Neptunes, which of course is Pharrell. You can hear him on the vocal here as well. Dude, I really like this. I like the hook in this. I like the constant little jazz horn we've got going on, dude. It's the hand clap in the background. Again, dude, for me, this is one of those tracks that everything fits. Nothing feels out of place. Everything is absolutely on point. So what's your opinion on Please? What do you think?
Love the production on this, man. Just the way it starts with that dun 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 dun, and then it just progressively gets harder and harder throughout the beat. I love it. I love the jabs he has where he's going back to the hook, which is basically the same refrain, but him going back to that refrain throughout the verse is so good. Just he's at his best when he's bragging to me. Like Jay has done other things, like he's done introspective records, he's done stuff where he's telling stories, he's done stuff where he's done even poignant stuff or tried to do like political messages, but he's just at his best when he's bragging.
And some interesting tidbits to the young Chris stuff here is that supposedly, well, not supposedly, Chris was signed to Rockefeller Records at the time. This is the only time he appeared on a Jay solo record. Jay would later appear on Chris's track, Never Take Me Alive. And there, I don't know if you know this, there's some controversy on this tune. There's people that have said that Jay stole young Chris's flow. Many point to the song as proof that Jay and Chris were rapping in a similar manner and that Jay had modified his technique since signing the young rapper. Do you give any credibility to that at all?
I know, like, Chris was signed to Rockefeller. He was in a group with the other guy, Neef. He is in the called the Young Guns. And Young Guns are later on this album. But I don't know. I know people say that because Chris is from Philadelphia and like the flow sounds similar, but Jay had used similar different flows throughout his career. I don't know if I would say that he stole it particularly from Chris.
I mean, you could look at any instance through the history of music and see where two guys work together, and then suddenly that guy sounds a little bit different. But yeah, I think the word "stole" is a little big, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say he stole his flow because I mean, I don't know. I get that it sounds similar, but I wouldn't say that he stole it.
You don't go to Pop and get your flour cheaper than us. Knock it off in 3 hours and repeat it like us. And repeat it, we must. Y'all
Yeah, and
don't
I
re up
really like
like
Chris's
us.
verse on this song as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the highlight of this song, of course, to me, is the Jay bar where he goes that these videos are like real TV. That chick, that's me. That six, that's me. That boat, I had it on the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah. Yeah. Just George Jefferson strolling on them. Yeah. I mean, everything fits. These two guys, you could argue that maybe he didn't even need Chris on this. Maybe if it was just him. But they do work well together here. I'd ask you what you think about, what was Jay's take on what was said about Chris after the fact, but I don't know that he would care too much. I mean, what sort of comeback do you think he would even have to that? I mean, obviously it's going to be no, of course I didn't do that, but
Yeah,
you could say he influenced him to a certain degree, couldn't you?
maybe. I don't think he would ever respond to something like that because at that point he's one of the biggest artists in the world. He's one of the biggest
Yeah.
rappers ever. He's not gonna go, oh, sure, this guy that most people don't know, like this obscure rapper that used to be on my label. I stole his flow. Yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna really I don't think anybody's gonna really pay too much credence to that. Unless you
Yeah.
just don't like Jay to begin with.
Yeah, very good point. Good point. Yeah, it gives you another bit of ammunition. Um, let's zip to track number 9. 3 minutes 34 seconds. This is Timbaland's first appearance on the Curse. It's definitely a Timbaland jam there, Phil. You could so tell by the beat that it's him.
Yeah, it's definitely a Timbaland record.
Yeah, from everything about the production of this song says Timbaland. This is too
Timbaland
many hoes.
Timbaland at the beginning doing Timbaland vocals.
Yeah.
Stop spitting in my face and go talk to them hoes in here.
I mean, I don't hate this tune, but as I said about F All Night from The Gift, it seems a little lazy. I don't want to say this is as lazy because I do like the beat. However, there's so much stuff going on in the production of this tune, man. It sounds very, very busy.
Yeah.
Uh, and if something's layered properly, it works. But to me, it just feels like there's so much going on here, and that's not the first time I've said this on this review, man. But does this song work for you? What do you think?
I like it because it fits the theme of the Curse and this idea that he's too recognizable to just go anywhere anymore, and that
Mhm.
if he goes out now Like there's too many people that are bothering him, and he's just like, look, I'm just out here trying to have a good time. I'm trying to meet some women. Leave me alone. Go away. And that's kind of the whole theme of this song, and it fits, like I said, the curse of being Jay. That he's just, for all of his success and everything that he has money to go anywhere and do anything, but he has to be inconspicuous now. He can't just go anywhere. And so I also really like the idea that this song is very well. The production of it is very beaty. It's like upbeat for this side of the album. I feel like it's one of the most upbeat sounds on the side of the album, but it works because it kind of creates this vibe of being in the club with Jay and listening to a club record, and he's rapping over it like, "Nah, I'm just here trying to hang. Leave me alone. Like, why? Get out of my face."
And, he's using the word hose sort of ironically. He's not even talking about women in this tune. He's talking about men acting like groupies, which I get it.
I mean, I think he's also saying, like, there's too many girls in here for you to be talking to me. Like, go talk to a girl.
Good point. Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
I mean, there's certain things in here that don't age very well. Like, there's a pretty fairly homophobic bar towards at the beginning of the first verse that, didn't age very well. But no, there are things that I like of him basically saying like, I'm just in here trying to talk to girls, or it might be some tough guys in here that thinking, oh, because I'm Jay, they can step to me. Like, nah. Yeah, I think my I think my favorite bar on this song though is the disappear like Copperfield, go play a hide and seek with yourself for real. Or good. You're a janitor, go find something to screw.
Oh, that's good. That's really good, actually. Dude, I said there was a lot going on here, and there is. Oh man, is there a lot going on? In my opinion, maybe too much. However, it's hard not to tap your foot to this. I mean, it's still, if you're on your feet and the song comes on, you kind of get a little movement going back and forth. It's kind of hard not to get into it, but I don't really skip this tune. I don't skip it. I do enjoy this song. It just feels like there's, I don't know, maybe less is more to some degree. But you're right.
I really like the chorus too, man.
Yeah, no, I do too. Yeah.
Why are you over here? So many holes in here. Office hours 9 to 5.
Quick
you
question,
call me there?
Yo. Quick question, yo. Why are you over here?
I ain't trying to be rude, dude. Won't you disappear?
My office hours 9 to 5. Won't you call me there? It's good. It's great. No.
Yeah. Nah. Yeah. It's a fun record. And I understand the theme and what he's trying to do with it.
Yeah. I know you rap and your sister spit too. You've been calling office and you can't get through. I understand all that, but now ain't the time. I came to the club, get that off my mind. Dude, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but this just put it in my head. After an entire workday of looking at social media and creating social media, when I leave the office, I do not want to create or even look at any more social media. It's like, please don't talk about Twitter. Please don't talk about Instagram. I just don't want to. I rarely ever look at the apps when I get home. So again, not entirely related, but a little. I kind of get it. I don't have groupies hanging off me, Phil. That's the difference. No groupies for the social media guy. Who would have thunk it? There'd be no groupies for the social media guy. No one wants my autograph, Phil. What's going on here? But no, you're right. It's this fun tune. And all you thugs with your war stories starting to bore me. I ain't trying to hear about your guts and glory. I'm trying to hear B.I.G. and some cuts from Nor. Yeah. And you keep talking about over the beat like Clue. Do you remember?
I really love that line. You keep talking over the beat like Clue. I love it.
So let's go now to track 10. This is As One. And man, there's a bunch of dudes on this tune. 3 minutes, 49 seconds, produced by Just Blaze. Memphis Bleak, Beanie Siegel, Freeway, Young Guns, Petey. Let's see, Petey Crack. Didn't want to mispronounce it. Sparks and Rail.
Yeah.
There you go. A lot of people here. A lot of people here, and dude, the songwriting credits on this tune are huge too. I mean, again, Phil, whole lot of stuff going on here, which could be okay, but could be a miss. Is there too much going on in this tune for you?
I generally don't like the song. I don't like that he's trying to reproduce this Earth, Wind and Fire record. And yeah, it just doesn't sound good. It just sounds very poppy. It doesn't even feel like it fits the second half of this album.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere. Yeah. I almost would submit that out of the last official records on the second half, Too Many Hoes is the last really good song on the second half of that album, because As One is not a good song. It's overstacked. There are too many features on it. I don't think that the I don't think the Earth, Wind and Fire sample fits. It's one of those songs that I'm like, how did this make the album?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's too busy for me. It's too busy. It kind of feels like this song doesn't know what it wants to be. Does it want to be that R&B throwback? Does it want to be a soul song? Does it want to be more modern upbeat? Does it want to be a rap song? I don't think it knows what it wants to be, and as a result of that, I can't. I like it's kind of like a good book or like a good like a movie or TV show. You try to find the character that's your way to get into the story. I
Yeah.
couldn't find a way to get into this song. I can't find anything that hooks me to get me into it, man.
Yeah, I find it to be a little cheesy.
Yeah.
It's I yeah, yeah. I don't really like it.
I'm not gonna. I tend to skip this one if I'm being honest. A lot of stuff going on. So I'm curious on your take for the next one because I got some thoughts on this. The next one is a ballad for the fallen soldier, featuring Mark Dorsey and Pharrell. Um, so we'll see. We've got the Neptunes again back on production for the song. 4 minutes 42 seconds. I love the sound of this tune. Again, this sounds like 70s soul. This sounds like a lot of the stuff that he did on the first Blueprint. More of a I don't want to say old fashioned, but more of a, again, like an R&B kind of soul song. But what's your take on this tune? Is this a hit for you or is it missing in any way? What do you think about A Ballad for the Fallen Soldier?
This is one of those, at the time, hearing it in high school, and I was like, this is kind of deep. It's not. It's not. It's a very shallow attempt at for Jay to compare uh actual soldiers at war to um people here in the US dealing with the street life, and it doesn't really work. Um I do like the production of it. I like the sound of it. I even like the hook of it. I like the vocals on it. But the subject matter of it, it's just not very good. um, because I think the message it tries to get across, it just kind of falls apart on itself. I don't know if that's just me.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get what you're saying. I think you're spot on. It tries to breathe. It tries to go to a certain direction that maybe is not really fitting. Of course, Phil, let's keep in mind this is from the middle class, blue collar white dude in the Carolinas making assumptions on what that life is like. I have no idea. So maybe I would feel differently if I were growing up in that kind of world and that kind of life, right? But it does kind of feel like it's not maybe the best fit. I don't know that he meant anything other than, hey, this is how I feel about it. I don't know. It almost does feel like I need the obligatory. And dude, this kind of feels like Tupac to me, just a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? Like the feel of this song kind of has that. This is my reality. This is what I came up in. This is because he used metaphors like this also.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels like it doesn't fit here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there are bits that are well written, uh, but I just think the juxtaposition that he tries to do, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Uh, just trying to compare soldiers to kids in the street, and kids that are dying. Um, I'm not one of those respect the troops guys,
Yeah.
but I do feel like there's some weird comparisons he tries to make, like comparing the police to the Al Qaeda. Saying police are like Al Qaeda to black men in the U.S. is kind of, I don't really like that comparison. Again, I get where he's going with it, but I wouldn't have tried to make that comparison work for the entire song.
It works in doses, right? Like it works in doses. But
Yeah,
if you go with a full out battalion and war scenario, it's kind of not working.
yeah,
Yeah, I get that. I guess it kind of fits side two of the album because it's sort of doom and gloom, but at the same time, yeah, it's another instance. And I'll be honest with you, man, where I feel like we're coming up more often than not making the same comments about this side of the album, which is very telling. Yeah, I don't know if it's working.
I I do think it's funny that right after he gave the clue line in Too Many Hoes, that clue is at the end of this to introduce you to the bonus tracks. And he jumps on, yeah, DJ Clue, time for bonus coverage. Come on.
So speaking of bonus tracks, we've got 3 bonus tracks at the end of this album, kids. We've got "Show You How," "Bees and Sisters," and "What They Gonna Do" Part 2. "Show You How" has got Just Blaze back on production. Um, Dude, I love Just Blaze, I really do. But for me, this track kind of just sits there, and the hook kind of annoys me. Uh, it's not a deal breaker per se, but I'm not in love with this tune. What's your thoughts on "Show You How"?
I like Show You How in the sense that it feels like a very old school rap record.
Hmm.
If it sounds like something you could hear in like early '80s hip hop, has that same kind of vibe to it. Um, there's certain things I like about it, like the way he starts the verse with the automata bar, and the now or later bar. The sick of y'all now or later rap about it now. Hope you get it later. Uh, yeah, so it's stuff like that I like. Or the you ain't heard we push the 6 while the 5s is out. Can't fight me in the Porsche. I box them out. There's a lot of, but that's the again. Jay's verses on this are I don't feel like are rarely the issue. Like I feel like some of the song choices and the beat choices are more of an issue than anything.
And to your point, you're right. It does sound like a throwback beat from the '80s. Very simple, same hook. It just repeats itself over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's
Something you
not
can
really.
imagine coming out of a boombox.
Yeah, it's not like he's like it. I mean, even the hook to it is just basically him doing the same refrain that I'll show you how to do this over and over. Um, yeah, but just again, there's certain stuff like him bragging on it that I'm never gonna pass on bragging Jay. He just that's when he's in his best bag. The uh, the how y'all want it. My jeans is 300. These ain't diesel. These is a Diesel.
You ain't heard I push the 6 when the 5s is out. You can't fight me in the Porsche. I'll box you out. Um, you're right. When his confidence is peaking and he's at all time high on his swagger, I mean he's you can't. It's hard to beat him. Hard to beat him on his delivery. It's good stuff. But there again, Phil, what is this album? What are we doing here? Is this an eclectic mix of different styles, or is this an album that doesn't know what it wants to be? Because if we were going for throwback '80s rap, cool, let's do that. But no, we're not. We're going to
Yeah,
stick that track in out of nowhere to give you that vibe, but then the rest of it's
for
going to
as
go
a
in
bonus
completely
record.
different directions. Yeah.
as a bonus record after I've given
Yes.
you 2 discs of music. You need more music. Here's bonus record.
Oh, here's
And
3
I just feel
more.
like he's like, hey, here's a lot of records. That's how I felt with a lot of this album. Here are a lot of records. Sometimes the theme works. Sometimes it sticks with the concept. And sometimes it doesn't. But here are a lot of records.
Yeah. Um, yeah. The next is Bees and Sisters, and I'm Just Blaze back on production. Isaac Hayes with a credit here. David Porter. I'm not
you
crazy
did.
about this.
You skipped over my favorite bar from Show You How to Get. Where
Oh
he
my God,
go?
did I?
Don't don't let him give you hard dick and bubble gum. Make him cop the Lexus Bubble 2001, hun.
Well, I thought maybe you'd bring that to the table. I wasn't sure.
Hey man, again bragging Jay when he's like, nah, I nah, I've already been there. I've done that. That's that. Yeah, he's always in his best bag.
Yeah, there again, as we said, man, he's not the problem. He's rarely the problem in any of the songs we're talking about. I don't think he has been one time. It's just, again, it's just not. I don't know. Something's not working here, kids. I have the same thought about Bees and Sisters. I'm not crazy about this. Him continuously saying the B word over and over and over again, and just it just
Yeah,
gets. It's kind of annoying. Again, it's that sticking point for me. It kind of in the back of your head. You can't stop with that. It just kind of makes you nuts. And um,
yeah. This is another one of those in high school when I heard this, I was like, oh man, this is deep. It's like, no, it's really not. It's really kind of juvenile. It's basically him in the second verse, giving what he believes is the difference between uh, bitches and sisters, and it's like, it it sounds good in theory, but it's like,
yeah,
ah. Uh,
um,
it,
yeah,
it, yeah, it. This is definitely one of his records that didn't age the best.
for
Um,
sure.
like I mean, like I said, that on the surface, the second verse when you listen to it, it's like, what's the problem with this? But it's like, yeah, it's just essentially him. I mean, it starts with the NWA sample, right? That's from NWA. The let's describe a certain female.
Yeah,
Uh, and yeah, just like I said, there are lines in here that I remember because I used to I used to listen to this constantly. But like listening to it in my 30s, it's like, yeah, this ain't it no more.
yeah, and it's honestly we're back to the beginning here when we've got track 14, which is another bonus track. The good thing about Bees and Sisters, it only ran for 2 minutes 39 seconds. There is a saving grace there, but the last track, What They Gonna Do, Part Two, 3 minutes 47 seconds. I think everyone may recall this was not a hit for me, and I don't think you were crazy about it either.
I really like
Um,
the verses on what they're gonna do, and I actually think
ah,
this version is better than the one that made the album
hmm.
because I feel like this beat kind of fits it better. Other than him trying to do this reggae record,
Yeah, at least there's no Sean Paul on this one. I'm just
yeah,
saying.
there's no Sean Paul. It's just basically all the same verses over a different beat, and it's not bad. But again, it's one of those where it's like, did this really need to make the album? Um, and yeah, that I feel like that is the story of this album. There are highlights, but there are so many things where I'm like, yeah, you probably could have left it off.
Yeah, yeah. I just don't. I'm not real sure. And plus, it's part two. Part one is on the first album, so I don't really know what we're.
Yeah, and I feel like if he
Yeah,
was gonna put a remix on this album, it should have been the remix to "Excuse Me, Miss." Maybe "Excuse Me" that remix wasn't made yet. Um, maybe that's the only thing I can think of why it did make the album.
yeah.
Um, but if I remember correctly, it made the soundtrack to Bad Boys 2,
Mm,
and he released it as a single. He actually made a video for it, but it's not on the Blueprint 2. There are two remixes on this album. Technically three remixes on this album, but the remix that was actually like the standout that got a video and it became like this big massive hit didn't make the album. Such a weird choice.
Very interesting. I don't get that either. Again, there's just so many instances on this album where I'm like, I don't know why the decision was made to do this. Dude, honestly, we've said the word confidence to a large degree here on this episode, and maybe I'm way off the mark, Phil. But man, maybe that's it. Maybe it was a bit of overconfidence. Maybe it was no
Yeah.
one can touch me. I'm very good at what I do. This will be
Uh, I
this will
think
all be a hit.
I think I have my answer. I just looked it up. Excuse Me Miss, well, La La La, that's the name of it. But the Excuse Me Miss remix was recorded after this album release. That's why I didn't make the album.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, again, dude, I don't want anybody out there to think that they have to, if you enjoy this album, go with God, my friend. Perfectly fine. We're just giving you honest critiques here. What we thought. The album made some money. I'm just saying this album's not necessarily a miss financially speaking.
No, not at all. And I think that's
Yeah.
why he released it. I think that's why he was like, well, a year later, people want more of my music. This album is going to sell off of the success of the first Blueprint. Because that was kind of still in the era where people were buying physical copies of music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that just was a different era before the times of streaming, where it was kind of like, all right, well, even if this album isn't that great, I'll give it a few spins, cool. But like, because the first Blueprint was such a massive success, it's considered one of his best albums. It just made so much sense for him to come back and do a follow up right away. Um, and yeah, it did what it was supposed to do. It went 3 times platinum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there are a lot of problems with this album. A lot of problems with this album. It's just too long. It's too much music. There's too much stuff that didn't need to be here.
Yeah.
And it just, for all of the highlights on the album, for all of the good things he does on this album, there are songs like As One that just don't need to be here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's several things that are just not working. But to your point, Phil, this thing made money, and Jay's going to make money regardless. And um, but yeah, just imagine another world had this been a single album, and all the tunes that we spoke highly of, that a lot of people spoke highly of, dude. In another world, the Blueprint 2 would have been possibly one of the best albums he had ever done. Not just from
Yeah,
making money, but also from a critical standpoint, it could have been amazing.
yeah. He's done this a few times in his career where I feel like he made an album that had a lot of standout tracks, but he made a lot of other duds on that same album that
Mm-hmm.
stopped it from being a classic album. Um, and yeah, I feel like this is definitely one of those where, yeah, and I'm one of those people that I don't feel like Jay has a bad album. I wouldn't consider this a bad album.
No.
Um, but he definitely, it's one of his weaker albums in my opinion. Uh, but still, with that said, he still has so many songs on here that I really like, and I mean, I could point out like 2 or 3 songs on this that are, you know, belong on a list of his best songs ever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I won't agree. I won't disagree with that at all. I'm totally with you on that. Um, yeah, again, it's not a terrible album, but there's just so much here, like to unpack, as they say. Um, yeah, and you know what, dude? Maybe that's the curse. Speaking of the curse, maybe that's the curse of being the solo artist that likes to do everything, that likes to be in charge of the show. And you've got really good producers working with you, and some of these guys are your boys, and you're tight with them, but you're the one calling the shots. You don't really have someone, I would assume, that's telling him, Jay, maybe we don't do that. One of the things that Paul McCartney has said in the past, that whatever Elvis went through alone. period. He had his posse with him, he had his entourage, but none of those guys knew what it meant to be Elvis. But all four of the Beatles knew what it meant to be a Beatle. So they could all bounce ideas off of each other. They could all talk to each other. They could hang out. They could, they could either make the album or not make the album. And George Martin was there for, for produce and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it was them that had to do the work. So maybe Jay's thing was, I'm the guy doing the work and I'm the one that decides. And I don't know, maybe there's good and bad to be said about a setup like that,
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting that you said Paul McCartney said that, because Paul McCartney has made several albums that are similar to this album where there are highlights on it and there is a lot of filler on there.
Very
he
true.
ha- he has double albums that I'm like, why did this need to be 2 discs? There's too much stuff on here that didn't need to be here. Um, but yeah, it's so interesting because this was such a high point in his career coming off of the Blueprint, and I feel like, regardless of what I feel at when this album came out, he was at his hottest during this time. And that's why, regardless of whether I feel like it's one of his best albums or not, it sold so well. He still had singles that did very well off of this. Like "Excuse Me, Miss" is still a big single.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even some of the other stuff that came out of this was a big high point in his career. And I would say it was a bit of a, I don't want to say learning curve, but I think I called it a good transitional album first half of this review.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, because there's so many things that work on this album um that he revisited later and improved on it, or there were so many things that, you know, maybe he started here and it started as a rough idea that wasn't as good, that got much better. Like, again, his collaboration with Beyonce on here, probably not my favorite, but they've done so many better collaborations since then, and their
Mm-hmm.
chemistry is so much better. Same with Kanye. Kanye's verse on here, not very good, but Kanye is Kanye after that. He turned into probably one of the most prolific rappers ever after that. So it does feel like in some ways this album was a melting pot for a lot of ideas that were probably not fully developed yet, but throughout the rest of his career, they got better.
Yeah, and honestly, as we said before, man, the total runtime here was 112 minutes and 2 seconds, and we probably could have narrowed it down to 30 minutes, perhaps. Um, but uh, we wouldn't have been the first two guys to ever take a double album and whittle it down and present what we would believe is our best album, or the
Yeah.
best possible release. So,
Yeah, I do feel like when Jay is focused and he has a concept to stick behind, um, we've gotten better albums out of him. I feel
yeah,
like that's, again, a reason why the Black Album was the Black Album, because it had a singular theme throughout the entire album. He kind of stuck with that. Um, you can make that argument for Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come has a kind of a theme, and he kind of sticks to the theme. Kingdom Come is also a very divisive Jay-Z album. Um, but
yeah,
same thing with American Gangster. It kind of works as a soundtrack, and it has a theme throughout it for the entirety of it, and it works. Um, Blueprint 3, Magna Carta, 444, those albums work better than this album because it kind of has like uh, it has kind of a theme or a concept that he sticks to for the entire album.
yeah,
And he
yeah.
tries to
Good
do that
call.
here, but he just he falls off the path a few times.
Yeah, very good call. Yeah, I mean, so again, it's not like it's the end of the world. Our review of this album, I mean, it is what it is, but um, let's just say this, kids. I'm anxious to get to part three. Let's just leave it at that. I'm anxious to get to part three. Much better album for sure. So, Phil, let's take this thing home. Give me your last word on The Curse.
The curse is it's it's flawed. It's very flawed. But between stuff like his verses on Blueprint 2, or his storytelling on Meet the Parents, I still feel like it's an album that I revisit a lot. And that kind of says a lot about Blueprint 2 as a whole, in that it is a polarizing album. It is probably one of his weaker albums, but there's still a lot to like about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just, a lot of it's highly unnecessary. A lot of it we didn't need. But there again, we do have some fantastic Jay stuff. We've covered a great Jay album here. We'll cover more in the future, I'm sure. A couple of great Jay albums, actually. But yeah, it's, again, kids, this is all subjective. You can love or hate whatever you choose to love or hate. Totally up to you. But also trust me when I tell you, it gets much better from here because Blueprint 3 is coming. So keep your eyes open for that. But in the meantime, that is the Blueprint Part 2, also known as The Curse. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.